happens in housing this year?
So we think that we're going to still see some moderation. So given that rates are still high, I think in many ways still prohibitively high for a lot of potential buyers. So even as mortgage rates have come down, we think they'll come down a little bit further this year, but still probably stay above 6%. And so for a lot of homeowners, that just still doesn't make sense to move. That's going to keep supply in the existing homes market tight. And with that, not a lot of supply, still probably see some increase in prices and just keep that affordability challenge very much in focus. Now, in terms of the builders, so they've been able to buy down rates to some extent, but that's getting harder and harder the longer rates stay elevated. So we're expecting construction to slow a little bit further this year too, as builders are having those affordability challenges too in terms of making the math work for buyers.
Sarah, somebody had told me an anecdotal piece that builders were actually making lower loans to move their inventory out and basically eating the difference between what their capital cost them and where they were lending it out because they were making it up on the price of the home to sell the home. Is that over with, or are builders still doing that?
It's getting harder. So you're still seeing some of that dynamic, but it's getting harder. Again, the longer you're in this higher rate environment, there's less and less you can take a bite out of.
Yeah, it's a finite number. Do you look at the housing industry when you price things out?
Yeah, certainly do. I mean, that is a very key component of the broader U.S. economy and the fixed income markets more broadly, particularly on the securitized. There's a lot of instruments that we look at that are housing related. So that's certainly on the mortgage-backed securities in particular, obviously very tied to that. So an area that we're spending a lot of time and being very focused on. I would concur with Sarah's view that it's probably a bit more of the same going into this year, so to say, not a dramatic shift for now, particularly if we have this a bit higher for longer backdrop where rates are probably going to stay fairly high. So not a major shift from what we saw in 2024, at least not for the first half of this year.
So housing nationally and housing in the Carolinas is different. I mean, it seems like, Mark, John, there's a lot of room to run yet in housing in not just the urban cores and the high growth areas in the Carolinas because of the in-migration, but it seems like, to use the analogy, there's a lot of red left on this candy and it hasn't been licked off yet when it comes to housing and exploding housing prices. Does that slow down?
I think that this year is going to be a pretty good year for housing in the Carolinas, and mainly because
meaning prices going higher.
Prices are going higher. We got stronger population growth. We're going to get a little bit of a break on rates. Florida is having problems right now, and inventories are backing up on Florida. And one of the things that can make it tougher for builders to get aggressive on buying down rates is they've got some earnings pressures coming out of Florida because so many folks are shying away from Florida because of insurance issues, and they've had a buildup in inventories. And every time that Florida has boomed, we've seen an echo boom here in the Carolinas where people move to Florida and they say, gosh, it's crowded, it's expensive, it's a lot more humid than I thought. And they said, you know what, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. I'm moving to the Carolinas. And so I think we're seeing that wave right now. And that with the exception of Asheville, which I think has got some longer running problems, it'll take them a little bit longer to get back up and running. I think that the Carolinas are going to have a pretty good year. South Carolina actually has stronger immigration than North Carolina does, even though the state's smaller than North Carolina.
I think South Carolina likes to be smaller than North Carolina because they can end run on a lot of things.